Good morning, everybody. It's BDF44 coming at you with a video. Last night I made about a 40-minute rant video about the Clippers, and it just was simply too long. It got spliced. I just deleted it. So I'll take some of the points that I made last night and try to make a more condensed video that you guys can enjoy. So, thanks for clicking on the face. The Clippers. Okay, so what I have come to realize about the Los Angeles Clippers over the last 24 hours or more is that was, in fact, the worst choke job in the history of the sport. Felt pretty good to watch it as a fan, but if I'm just trying to be an analyst, I try to break down what went wrong. They had chemistry issues, obviously. The bubble was not a good transition for their team. Some teams transitioned well, others didn't. And they had some issues with their roster that no one was really paying much attention to. And I think that trickled down. And I said at the beginning of the season, if you go back and watch some of my old videos, when that Clipper situation first manifested, when they first announced Kawhi's decision, I said it in the weeks following, as the team was starting to progress, they need to get a playmaker. They need someone who can make all of their very, very, very good weapons come together. Nobody on that team was capable of that at all. And that was the problem. That was the problem. I think you can find a lot of different things that went wrong with their chemistry. You can find a lot of different things that make it so that teams don't feel like teammates don't feel like they're on the same page. Coaching was an issue, things like that, all that, fine. True. But what really starts problems on a basketball team? Losing. Selfishness. Guys not getting their touches. Guys not getting their minutes. Guys being frustrated with guys who are taking shots who are missing them. And that's what you see in a lot of in LA with the Clippers. Especially down the stretch of the postseason. Whole lot of blaming, whole lot of finger pointing, whole lot of heads down. They needed to address their playmaking situation. There's something about the game of basketball that I've come to understand. You can have all the weapons in the world. Big, tall people who can score and do all kinds of different things. But if you don't have someone down there, they don't have to be starters. They don't have to be point guards. But someone on the floor that is thinking, pass, thinking, let me get that guy in his spot so he can score easily and get going. Guys who are cognizant of the clock, although everybody on the team should be cognizant of the clock at all times. The point guard's responsibility is that. Guys who are aware of different things on the floor to just make things click. I don't care if your coaching staff is pass-minded. If you don't have passing-minded players on the floor, it's not going to be easy to make a cohesive team happen. And that's the reality of it. Not enough emphasis is placed upon ball movement and how it makes other things fall in place within the sport. And that's what the Clippers were lacking for all of the things that they had going for themselves. The glaring weaknesses that they had were both no playmaking player on the floor and not enough talent in size. Okay, Zubac is big. I'm not going to sit up here and clown him in any way. I liked him, and I think that he was a fantastic Laker. I would welcome him back. I see his strengths, all that. He's a fantastic center in this league, in my opinion. But when I say the word fantastic, that doesn't mean extraordinary. He's not Jokic. He's not Joel Embiid. He's not Karl Anthony. He's not those guys. And because of it, you were hoping that Trez could kind of step into being one of those guys. He is also not one of those guys. He's a scoring center, undersized 5'4" type guy, tweener. He is not going to be able to have any success against the Anthony Davises and the Jokics of the world. It's just not going to happen. And the Clippers were trying to go forward with this super talented squad. but they weren't an actual squad. They were just a bunch of super talented individuals who came together wearing the same clothes, same jerseys, but they weren't playing team basketball. It sounds like a cliche when people mention play team ball, no. It's not cliche. There's something to be said for pace, ball movement, moving the ball from side to side so that the defense can't set up. The ball coming to players in their spaces, as I said, catching it in their pockets so shooters can catch and get easy scores, catching the ball in stride so all they have to do is lay it up and dunk the ball. That's what your point guard's job is to do. If he's really good at what he does, he's going to make sure that you get better. You are going to be better for him being on the team. And that is what the Clippers lacked in all of their talent. Someone to just make others better. No one on that team made anybody else better. Everybody on that team is thinking, I got to get mine. I am going to score. We are down 15. I am going to score. Everybody on that team has that mentality. Lou Williams, I'm scoring. Getting to the line. Paul George, I'm scoring. Shooting. Kawhi Leonard, I'm shooting. Trez, dunking. Laying it up. The other guys, shooting. JaMychal Green, shooting. Landry Shamet, shooting. Reggie Jackson, shooting. You see what I'm saying? Marcus Morris, shooting. Nobody on that team is thinking, let me get that guy going. Nobody on that team is thinking, okay, if I make this pass, that pass is going there, and the defense ain't going to be able to get over there quick enough to make that happen. So let's keep the ball moving. Let's keep the ball popping, as they say. Keep the ball popping. San Antonio was the best team I ever seen do that. They were the team that showed me the importance of ball movement because they didn't always have the most flashy players. They didn't have the sexiest names all the time. And sometimes they weren't even favored to win the series that they were in, though that was rare. But what they were able to do is play hard-nosed defense and suffocate you with fantastic pace, the popping of the ball, great passing, ball movement, sharing, playing with, amongst one another. And that is what the Clippers lacked. For all their talent, they didn't have anybody to make the team better. So that's what they need to address. That's what they need to address. All of their problems started first without a point guard. Even some of the off-the-court issues. Because guys are going to be happy if they're catching the ball in their spots, if they're getting their touches, if they're getting their minutes, etc. Guys will not complain. Guys will be more willing to make sacrifices if they feel the people next to them are making those sacrifices and want to see them succeed. And the guise of not thinking someone wants you to succeed is easy to be confused by when the style of play consists of everybody trying to get it themselves. It doesn't mean that the person who's like that is selfish. It doesn't mean that they are trying to lose. It doesn't mean that they're thinking first. It's just that this is the weapon that they are. So it's up to the coaching staff and the GM to surround that weapon with the type of playmaking, defensive talent, and things that complement them properly so that they can win. And that is what the Clippers need to do. Everybody's saying, oh my God, the Clippers, the sky is falling, let's blow it up. No, just bring in what you don't have. That's literally all your job is, GM, for the Clippers. I know everybody's sitting up here saying, well, we got to explain how guys collapse. We got to get the chokers off the team. No. The reality is we know who Paul George is. You know who Paul George is. So you get what you need to assure that you get the most out of him. Simple solution. You don't throw away what you have because it's flawed. You bring in what you need to make it work. And the Clippers have yet to do that. It's year one. And look, you don't get an instant championship. Did the Miami Heat win the championship their first year? Nah. They didn't. Most teams, did Detroit win it their first year? No. Did Chicago win it their first year? No. Did the Lakers and Shaq and Kobe win it their first year? We got bounced several times before we became champions. The Clippers giving up on what they have isn't smart. What they need to do is replace Montrezl Harrell with a real center since he's leaving for money anyway. Replace Marcus Morris with another shooter since he's leaving anyway, more than likely. And find yourself a point guard. I like Patrick Beverley. He can be my backup. Certainly somebody I want on the floor defending people. but he's not the answer at point guard. Now look at what Boston has going on. Does Marcus Smart have value? Lots of it. Is he meaningful in these playoffs? They wouldn't be where they're at without him. Do they count on him to run their offense? Hell no. Same exact thing. The Clippers need their Kemba Walker. And that's what I was saying last night in my video that you'll never see. Kemba Walker is what Marcus Smart needs to succeed. You don't throw Marcus Smart away because he's not a passing playmaker, because he bricks a lot of shots in his development, because he's inconsistent in becoming who it is that he's trying to become. He's a young player, so I use him as a developing progression, as unlike Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and some of these other guys who've been in the league longer. But the situation's still the same. Bottom line is, we're not throwing away the piece because it's flawed. You just get what the piece needs to best maximize its usage. And that's what the Celtics have done. They didn't sit there and wait for Marcus Smart to be their point guard of the future just because they drafted him with the 6th pick 4 years ago. It doesn't mean that he's not developing properly just because they can't seem to get him to run the offense. They're not asking him to do something he's not supposed to do. They've identified what his strengths are, they identified what his weaknesses are, and they have brought him into a circumstance that fits him. And he's flourishing. And they're in the Eastern Conference Finals because of it. Patrick Beverley, same thing. That is what's needed. Same exact thing is what's needed. You don't throw away Patrick Beverley. He's fine. He's exactly what you need him to be. You bring in somebody to step in ahead of him to pass the rock. I heard something about Drew Holiday being on the block. The Brooklyn Nets are trying to get at him. I don't think the Clippers have the pieces to acquire a Drew Holiday, but that's along the lines that they need to be thinking. You need to bring in a real point guard. That's it. Bring in a real, legitimate point guard. Or find somebody outside of the point guard position that can facilitate your offense. Jokic is doing it better than anybody. Maybe there's another player out there outside of the point guard position who you like that you can get to pass the rock around for you. But that's what you need. That is what the LA Clippers need more than anything else. Not to fire Doc Rivers, not to trade Paul George unless it's the only way to get the pieces that you need, as to which you would then have a glaring hole where he's left, and no retaining value for what you gave up for him. I just don't think that that's the move. Look, when I identify what a guy is, then I can start to surround my expectations around what it is that I know. Okay? That's what it is with Paul George. I still look at him as an elite scorer. I still look at him as an elite defender. But I just know that when it comes down to it, he can't come through down the stretch. When it's a closeout game, if he's coming in, he bricks 3 shots, I'm sitting him. I'm going to treat him like Ben McLemore or somebody. No disrespect, but like he's getting role player treatment in those situations. I am going to cater to what I understand you to be if I'm your coach. You know, just like I'm talking about with Marcus Smart and what he has versus Patrick Beverley and what he needs in order to best succeed on this team. No different than looking at what a guy can't do when he shows you his limitations. Hey, Paul George doesn't play well under certain types of stress. So he shouldn't be your second option. You bring in a guy ahead of him, make him your third option, put him in a Kuzma role, and he flourishes. And when it's time to get some scoring down the stretch of a closeout game, you're not even looking at Paul George. He's not even getting the ball. You're giving it to that guy. You're giving it to Kawhi, and you're hoping that they can do something for you because you've prepared for the deficiencies of the players that you have in your position. And that is what the Clippers need to do. You don't say it's broken. You just put Band-Aids on the open wounds. You don't have gunshots. There's nothing really wrong with the Clippers. What ended up happening to them is that because they didn't have a point guard, because they didn't have nobody setting them up, their chemistry fell apart because the guys, as I've said already, of selfish play became the understanding. That's what I think happened. Guys started believing that everybody else is selfish just because of how they play. When all it takes is a smart coach understanding, or rather a smart GM looking in and saying, we need a Rondo, we need a Lonzo, we need a passer, we need a Jokic, we need a Bron, we need somebody who's thinking, get that guy going. He's slumping, let's get him an easy basket. Ah, man, our offense is stagnant. Let me create something. Let me back up, put some fingers in the air, and run a play. Like, that's what they are missing. They didn't have it. They literally had no one quarterbacking the offense. I don't give a damn how talented your weapons are. You need a quarterback. The analogy I used last night. The wings on the Clippers, their legendary wings, are like wide receivers. What good is a wide receiver if he doesn't have a quarterback that can get him the ball? You got Kawhi Leonard, great wide receiver on one side. Paul George, great wide receiver on the other side. Landry Shamet and all these different weapons. But no quarterback. I'm not talking about a bad quarterback. No. No quarterback. That's what's wrong with the Clippers. So while you can find the best wide receivers in the NFL, you can match Julio Jones up with DeAndre Hopkins and then toss in, someone else that's of cachet. But if you have me throwing the ball down there, who cares how talented they are? It won't matter. They will never score. And that's the point. So the Clippers need to find their point guard. He doesn't need to be amazing. He doesn't have to be a super cap guy. He really doesn't. He just has to be competent enough to stay in front of his man, think pass, and then be able to knock down a shot or two. It's really all you need. You can probably find a guy like that as a second year or third year guy on the back of somebody's bench. But you need to find him. You need to find him, and you need to put him on this team. That's what needs to happen. The Clippers have to do that. So yeah, I'm talking in circles. Thank you guys for watching that. Another thing that I want to talk about in regards to the Clippers is whether or not I think they should ultimately fire Doc Rivers. And, I think I've probably already answered that question in this video because I was basically saying no. But I'll dig a little deeper into what I'm thinking in regards to Doc Rivers. So look, I've always felt that Doc Rivers was a bit overpraised. Overrated, I don't really like that word. It sends a different feeling to what I actually feel for this particular situation. He's overpraised. The one championship that he won with the Celtics, they were highly favored to beat our team, the Lakers. We had lost Bynum for the season, had just acquired Powell mid-season. He had just got there. He didn't have a complimentary center, and we know that his makeup and his style of play was not a bruiser. He's not a strong presence physically in the paint. He threw his weight around as he progressed as a Laker and got better as a Laker. But that first year, he wasn't going to be enough in the paint dealing with Kendrick Perkins and KG. It just wasn't happening. So right there, we were at a disadvantage going into that series without Bynum. And we didn't have Trevor Ariza, although Trevor Ariza had played in the playoffs and had been extremely helpful in getting us to the finals. For whatever reason, Phil Jackson refused to play him in the finals. And we were running Vladimir Wadmanovic, who I figured and saw that it looked like he quit. And I said it then, and I'll say it now. He, particularly, in my opinion, looked like he had quit on the Lakers. His play was so anemic, and his effort looked so poor in that series that I felt that we had no chance after like game 2, watching just him running small forward down there. You asking him to go up against Paul Pierce, who was pretty much still in his prime. We weren't going to have any success there. They had Ray Allen there. The moral of the story is the Boston Celtics were significantly better than the Los Angeles Lakers that year, and they dominated us in the series because of it. Okay? No secret. 2008, we weren't on their level. He didn't do anything spectacular, in my humble opinion, in winning that championship. That was like Ty Lue with LeBron. Like, you're going to win because you have the talent. And I don't want to take anything away from those two guys, black coaches. I respect the position. I respect their opportunities and all that good stuff. I don't want to get into another type of conversation about this or send the wrong message. But at the same time, it's like, look, Doc has been given a much longer rope than a lot of guys have been given. A much longer rope. He has had 2 championship caliber teams with the Clippers. Not 1, 2. People forget that year with Donald Sterling, when they were going through that situation, that team was a top 3 team in all of the league. The Clippers were the favorite to come out of the West that year. They were supposed to be Clippers versus Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken, or Miami. I don't remember. It was probably Cleveland at that time. I think LeBron had already gotten back, but either way, Clippers had a phenomenally deep squad, exceptionally deep, arguably as deep as they are right now. And they did nothing with them. Now, some would say, well, they just gave up because nobody wants to win a championship for Donald Sterling during that era. You just kind of don't want to play for him. So, okay, if you want to give him a pass for that, fine. But let's not talk about galvanizing troops and keeping people focused. Because Doc Rivers has had a history of not being able to do so under adverse circumstances. And I have seen teams play through adverse circumstances and still succeed. I've seen individual players do it. I've seen teams do it. So that situation with Donald Sterling, to me, deserves more conversation. I need more of an explanation, personally, for why that team didn't play well down the stretch. Now, if they say what my thought is, which is they just didn't want to win for him, I'll let it go. I'll let it go. But I need to hear that. As a fan of the NBA, I have my concerns about whether or not that team should have actually fizzled out the way that they did despite the circumstances surrounding the Clippers. I felt that way then. And I still feel that way to this second. That team should have played better. They shouldn't have went out that way unless they were quitting on the owner. And if that's what they were doing, I'll accept that. But that's one situation with Doc Rivers I can sit up there and say, well, that's pending as far as I'm concerned. My opinion on that is pending. Then we look at what he did in Orlando when he first got his coaching job. That team was terrible. They fired him quick. It was nothing to talk about. That was just a bad situation there. He immediately got a quick job with the Celtics and ends up inheriting a dynasty championship caliber trio. Leaves there. They blow that team up. He goes to the Clippers and inherits Chris Paul out of nowhere, inherits the first pick in the draft, Blake Griffin out of nowhere, and a super high-powered center who develops into DeAndre Jordan at the same time. Okay? Got them nowhere. They couldn't even get to the finals. They couldn't get to the Western Conference Finals, not once. Lob City, the great entertaining Lob City, never did anything under Doc Rivers. Did he get fired? No. They promoted him. They promoted the man to GM. Did he make good moves as GM? A lot will argue he made bad moves as GM. Now, I don't have a list of the moves that he made as GM, but I remember the taste that they left in my mouth when looking at them, and I remember how the team fell apart. Some of the moves that he made as GM were bad, and that's why he was then demoted back to just coach. Still has his job. He inherits Kawhi Leonard. He inherits this team that we see right now, Paul George. And then what just happened just took place. How much rope do you get a man? How much rope does Doc Rivers receive? The whole situation with his son. There were players on the team who were pissed off about that situation because they felt that he was compromising the mission by trying to salvage his son's career by getting him out of New Orleans. The trade, a lot of people didn't agree with the trade. A lot of people didn't like how the roster was set up after Austin got there, et cetera, et cetera. That was reported. Kept his job through that. He ends up trading his own son, or they end up trading his son away after he loses the job, the GM position. I'm not sure which. I don't know. Point is, the son leaves. He's still there, living off of this mystique of being this great championship coach who literally won a championship against a lopsided situation that would have probably been a victory for any coach in the league if they would have had those circumstances. I know Mike Brown would have loved to coach them Celtics. You know what I'm saying? I know many a coach. Name them, all coaches. Any coach would have loved to have been in that situation against those Lakers that year. Because you were going to win the ring, period. I could have coached them to a ring. Like, seriously. So if that's the championship that we're giving Doc Rivers as a means of saying he deserves all this rope with the Clippers despite failing with two different championship teams and a little bit of nepotism, if that's okay, then he should stay. If you're happy with that, then he should stay. If you're too afraid to try to give another coach an opportunity, then he should stay. But what I will say is, sitting here and expecting things to get better because of him, how much more do you need to see? Feels like a mistake to me. Feels like a real mistake. So while I don't know that I fire him right now, if that team is struggling next year around this time, they fizzle out in the playoffs, or if they by All-Star break they have chemistry issues, probably not getting it done, not playing up to the level that we know the Clippers to play, yeah, I'll fire him then. But firing him in this offseason, despite everything I just said, from a schematic planning standpoint, just doesn't feel right. And the reason why is because you have a short offseason. The free agent pool is kind of dry. It's not a real serious free agent year. You do have a team that's superior to 99% of the teams in the league right now, despite your deficiencies. And he is a championship coach, despite everything that we've just talked about. So, do I fire him? No. Does he deserve to be fired? Yes. Will I give him a short leash going forward? The leash ain't going to be longer than 6 inches, people. It's going to be a short leash. Okay? That team needs to get off to a fast start starting next season. They need to address their issues that are not his responsibility. The GM needs to do his job as well to make sure that they get the facilitating point guard and the centers that they need. And then, with fixing the roster, if he can't get the most out of that roster, then you send him elsewhere and get him up out of here. But until that time, I think it's probably just best to stand pat and just try to fix your problems. Try to get what you need. And that's that. Obviously, they're stranglehold by their cap situation. That Paul George trade really set them back quite a bit. But, worse holes have been dug out of. And you do have the assets to fix your situation, though you may not want to part with Paul George. If it comes to parting with Paul George to fix your problems, that's an option. And it's a luxury, so to speak. So, maybe that's what you do. But at the end of the day, the Clippers are still a very, 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 very talented team. I do believe they were better than the Nuggets. I still think they're better than the Nuggets. But they have holes. And you address those holes, and you see where it takes you, And that's what I have to say about my most hated rival team. Thank you guys for sitting here watching all of that. And, yeah, man, it is what it is, LA has 2 teams. One of them is one of the greatest teams of all time, and the other is one of the worst teams of all time. The worst team of all time thought that they could undercut the great team, and karma hit. That's what I saw. I don't know how you guys saw it. That's what I saw. At the end of the day, they're a more talented team, and they fizzled out in the most embarrassing fashion you can ever imagine. Sounds like karma. My name is BDF44. I'm out. Go Lakers.